Hey there, fellow explorers of the Toddler universe. We've gathered some intel on a particularly tricky terrain. Tantrums, you know. Those moments when your little one transforms into a tiny hurricane of emotion. Well, we're about to embark on a deep dive into understanding those mini meltdowns. And trust me, you want to grab your emotional compasses for this one.
It can definitely feel like navigating uncharted territory sometimes. But understanding why those tantrums happen is the first step to smoother sailing.
Absolutely. Our mission for this deep dive is to use this guide on toddler tantrums to help decode the why behind those outbursts and give you some practical strategies to not only survive them, but actually thrive amidst the chaos.
Because here's the thing, tantrums aren't just noise and frustration. They're a form of communication, a window into the complex emotional world of a developing little human.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like they're trying to send us a message, but the signal is getting lost in translation.
Exactly. Imagine trying to explain your deepest desires and frustrations with a vocabulary of just a few words. That's kind of what's happening in a toddler's brain during a tantrum.
So it's not that they're trying to be difficult or manipulative, it's that they haven't yet developed the tools to communicate effectively.
Precisely. And add to that a rapidly developing limbic system, which controls their emotions, and a prefrontal cortex responsible for reason and control. That's still playing catch-up. It's a recipe for some pretty intense emotional fireworks.
Wow, that's a really helpful way to think about it. It's like their emotional control panel is still under construction.
Exactly. And that's where understanding the specific triggers for those tantrums becomes crucial. This guide actually highlights 5 key reasons behind those meltdowns, and some of them might surprise you.
All right, hit me with those reasons. I'm ready to take notes.
Well, first and foremost, we have frustration. Imagine building a towering block castle, only to have it topple over before you reach the top. Now imagine not having the words to express that wave of disappointment and anger.
Ouch, that's a relatable scenario even for adults. So tantrums can be a way for toddlers to release that pent-up frustration when they can't achieve what they want or articulate their needs.
Exactly. And sometimes the source of frustration is less about achieving a goal and more about navigating a world that feels way too big for their little bodies.
It's like being dropped into a foreign country where you don't speak the language. Everything feels overwhelming and confusing.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And that sense of overwhelm can lead to our second reason for tantrums: overstimulation. Too much noise, too many people, too much visual clutter. It can create a sensory overload that their developing brains struggle to process.
It makes sense. Think about how frazzled you feel after a day of back-to-back meetings or navigating a crowded airport. Now imagine experiencing that with a brain that's still learning how to filter and prioritize all that sensory input.
It's no wonder they reach their breaking point. And sometimes, that breaking point is triggered by something as simple as a rumbling tummy.
Ah, yes, the dreaded hanger. Because let's be honest, nobody makes good decisions when they're hungry, right?
Especially not toddlers. Their energy reserves deplete quickly, and when those basic needs aren't met, it can trigger a cascade of intense emotions.
So a meltdown might actually be their way of saying, hey, I need a snack,
Yeah.
or I'm ready for a nap.
Exactly. It's a reminder for us parents to pause and consider the underlying need before jumping into discipline mode. And speaking of needs, another key driver of tantrums is the powerful need for independence.
Oh, yes. Those budding explorers want to assert their autonomy, don't they? It's like they're constantly testing the boundaries of their little worlds.
It's all part of their drive to become their own person, to make their own choices, even if those choices involve wearing mismatched socks or refusing to eat anything green.
It's like their own mini rebellion, a declaration of, hey, I'm here and I have opinions. And sometimes those opinions manifest as a full-blown tantrum.
That's right. And finally, we have a reason that can be both frustrating and endearing. Testing boundaries. They're like little scientists conducting experiments on their social environments. If I scream loud enough, will I get that cookie?
It's their way of figuring out cause and effect, of understanding the rules of their world.
And as much as we might want to avoid those testing moments, they're actually a crucial part of development. It's through those interactions that they learn about limits, consequences, and the power of negotiation.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've uncovered 5 key reasons behind those tantrums: frustration, overstimulation, unmet basic needs, the desire for independence, and good old-fashioned boundary testing.
And understanding these reasons is like getting a glimpse into the control panel of a toddler's brain.
Yeah,
It helps us respond with empathy and compassion, even when those tantrums test our patience.
absolutely. So we've decoded the why, but what about the how? How do we actually handle those emotional outbursts in a way that's both effective and supportive?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Because while there's no magic off switch for tantrums, there are strategies that can make a world of difference. And that's exactly what we'll be diving into next. All right, let's imagine you're in the trenches facing a full-blown toddler tantrum. What's the first line of defense?
Okay, deep breaths. I'm picturing myself as a calm, steady oak tree in the midst of a storm. Because I know if I get swept up in their emotional whirlwind, it's only going to make things worse.
Exactly. You're the role model in this situation. Your little one is looking to you for cues on how to navigate those big, scary feelings. If you mirror their intensity, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire.
So we need to regulate our own emotions before we can help them regulate theirs. It's like putting on our own oxygen mask before assisting others.
Precisely. And once you've found your inner calm, it's time to employ a powerful tool, validation. And this doesn't mean you're giving in to their demands. It's about acknowledging that their feelings, however intense, are real and valid.
So instead of saying, don't be silly, it's just a broken crayon, we should say something like, I see you're really upset that your crayon broke. It's okay to feel sad about that.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is that validation sends a powerful message to your child. It tells them that their feelings matter, that they're understood. And that can be incredibly calming in the midst of an emotional storm.
It's like we're helping them build a bridge between their emotional world and the world of language.
And that bridge building is crucial for developing emotional intelligence. By naming their feelings, we're giving them the vocabulary to understand and express themselves in healthier ways as they grow.
So validation isn't just about diffusing the current tantrum, it's about investing in their long-term emotional development. I love that.
And sometimes validation alone isn't enough to shift the energy, and that's where a little bit of strategic redirection can come in handy. Remember, toddlers have short attention spans.
Yeah.
And we can use that to our advantage.
It's like a gentle nudge towards a different track, right? Maybe we introduce a new toy, sing a silly song, or even just point out something interesting in the environment.
Exactly. It's amazing how quickly a toddler's focus can shift with a little creative distraction. And if distraction doesn't work, we can always try giving them a sense of agency through choices.
Oh, choices are powerful, even if it's something simple like, do you want to wear your red shirt or your blue shirt?
Giving choices taps into a toddler's emerging autonomy. It helps them feel empowered rather than controlled, which can significantly reduce those power struggles.
And it sets the stage for them to make bigger, more complex decisions as they grow. But of course, those choices need to be within the boundaries we set right.
Absolutely. Empathy and firmness go hand in hand. It's important to explain the rules clearly and stick to them, even in the midst of a meltdown.
So if the rule is no screen time before dinner, we hold firm even if the tantrum reaches epic proportions.
Consistency is key here. Giving in even once teaches them that tantrums are an effective way to get what they want. And that's a lesson we definitely don't want to reinforce.
It's about teaching them that their feelings are always valid, but their behavior has limits. And sometimes those tantrums aren't about pushing boundaries or wanting a particular toy. They're simply a signal that a basic need isn't being met.
That's a great point. It's so easy to jump into discipline mode. But sometimes the most effective response is simply making sure they've had enough sleep, food, and water.
It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, toddler edition. We need to address those fundamental needs before we can expect them to regulate their emotions effectively.
Exactly. And that's a great segue into another crucial aspect of tantrum management, teaching emotional regulation. We can't expect toddlers to be born with the ability to soothe themselves. So we need to provide them with the tools and strategies to navigate those big feelings.
I'm curious, what are some simple techniques we can use to help them regulate their emotions?
Well, deep breathing is surprisingly effective, even for little ones. You can teach them to smell the flower, blow out the candle, or simply take slow, deep breaths with you.
I love that. And we can also encourage them to use words to express their feelings. I'm feeling angry because, or I'm sad that.
Exactly. It's like we're giving them the tools to build their own emotional toolkit. And sometimes even something as simple as hugging a favorite stuffed animal or taking a break in a quiet space can help them reset and calm down.
It's about helping them find healthy coping mechanisms that work for them.
Now, before we move on to what not to do during a tantrum, I want to emphasize one more thing. It's easy to get caught up in the idea of fixing tantrums, but sometimes the best approach is simply to ride the wave.
Ride the wave. I like that analogy. It's about accepting that tantrums are a natural part of development, and that sometimes the best we can do is offer comfort and support while our little one weathers the storm.
Exactly. It's about meeting them where they are, holding space for their emotions, and trusting that they'll eventually find their way back to calm.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about staying calm, validating their feelings, using distraction and redirection, offering choices, setting clear boundaries, addressing basic needs, and teaching emotional regulation.
And now it's time to shine a light on some common pitfalls to avoid, because we've all been there, standing in the grocery store aisle with a screaming toddler, desperately trying anything to make it stop.
Oh, I know those moments all too well. So what are the big tantrum no-nos that we should avoid?
Well, first on the list is bribery. It might seem like a quick fix in the moment, but it sends a dangerous message. It teaches them that tantrums are an effective way to get what they want, which can lead to more frequent and intense tantrums down the road.
So we're trading short-term peace for long-term chaos. Not a good strategy. What else should we avoid?
Shaming. Saying things like, stop acting like a baby, or you're being ridiculous, only makes them feel worse and doesn't address the underlying issue. It's like pouring salt on a wound.
It's about separating the behavior from the child. Their behavior might be frustrating, but they are still worthy of love and respect.
And finally, we need to make sure we're not inadvertently ignoring those basic needs. If a tantrum is fueled by hunger or fatigue, addressing those needs is crucial. Ignoring them only prolongs the tantrum and doesn't teach them any coping skills.
It's like trying to teach someone to swim by throwing them in the deep end without a life jacket.
Exactly. We've covered a wide range of strategies and potential pitfalls, but here's the thing I find most interesting. Even with the best toolkit, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to tantrums.
You're right, each child is unique, with their own temperament, triggers, and communication style. So what might work wonders for one toddler could totally backfire with another.
That's why it's so important to observe your child, understand their individual cues, and adapt your strategies accordingly. And that brings us to a final thought-provoking question to ponder. As you continue your journey through the wonderful world of toddlerhood,
So we've covered the why behind tantrums, a whole arsenal of strategies to navigate them, and even some common pitfalls to avoid. But as you just mentioned, each toddler is like a unique little puzzle. How can we tailor those strategies to fit our individual child's personality and needs?
that's where the real artistry of parenting comes in. It's about becoming a detective of your child's emotional landscape. What sets them off? What calms them down? What are their unique ways of communicating their needs?
So it's less about following a rigid script and more about being attuned to their individual cues and adapting our approach on the fly.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about moving away from the idea of fixing tantrums and towards understanding them as opportunities for connection and learning.
I love that shift in perspective. So instead of seeing a tantrum as a battle to be won, we see it as a chance to deepen our understanding of our child and strengthen our bond.
Precisely. And that requires us to be present, patient, and curious. It's about asking ourselves, what is my child trying to tell me through this behavior?
That's a great question to keep in mind. It helps us move beyond frustration and into a space of empathy and problem solving.
And as you become more attuned to your child's unique signals, you'll start to recognize patterns. Maybe you notice that your little one is particularly sensitive to loud noises, so you start to create a calming environment at home. Or perhaps you realize that their tantrums often coincide with hunger, so you make sure to offer snacks regularly throughout the day.
It's about being proactive and anticipating their needs, which is easier said than done. I know.
It takes practice, but it becomes more intuitive over time. And remember, you don't have to figure it all out on your own. This guide is packed with additional resources and support strategies, but even beyond the guide, there's a whole community of parents navigating these same challenges.
That's so important to remember. We're all in this together, learning and growing alongside our little ones.
And that's what makes parenthood such an incredible, albeit messy, adventure. It's a journey of constant discovery, both for our children and for ourselves.
You've given us so much to think about today. Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they navigate the ups and downs of toddlerhood?
Remember, you've got this. Every tantrum, every challenge is an opportunity for growth and connection. Embrace the messiness, celebrate the small wins, and never underestimate the power of a deep breath and a good dose of humor.
Beautifully said. That wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating world of toddler tantrums. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and maybe even a few new tools for your parenting toolkit. Until next time, happy exploring!